also an extensive introduction. Very gracious. Thank you for that. It really is a delight to be able to be here this morning. It's especially gratifying to see momentum beginning to build towards two very significant dates, 2014 and 2017. This afternoon we'll have the chance to work together to look at 20 different questions related to the island's celebration in 2014 and Canada's celebration 3 years later. But this morning, what I'd like to do is relate to a little bit about the history. Not of 1864 or 1964, a guy from away, it'd be foolish to try, but rather to talk about the run-up to 1967 and some of the lessons I think we can take from that era. I also want to talk briefly about some of the activities that are already underway and why it is that I think PEI has a very special role to play, leading Canada not only in a celebration of that rare, sometimes awkward, but still immensely successful political experiment we call Confederation. What we want to do is not only celebrate, but also initiate a new and very expansive conversation about our future and what it's like to be a Canadian today. You see, the funny thing is that national anniversaries really can't be avoided. Whether you like them or not, they're built into the system. As my friend Peter McLeod likes to say, if it ends in a 0 or it's divisible by 5, watch out. Because the anniversary compulsion will have its way with you. Well, one way or another, something's going to happen. And if it is, well, we might as well make the most of it. We should make it count. But the immediate question then isn't why, but rather how. How should it count? Well, in the run-up to 1967, we weren't all that sure that it would. Our 50th anniversary landed in the midst of the First World War, and our 75th occurred towards the end of the Second. Canada didn't have much of a tradition of celebrating its birthday, and it might have been that the centennial would have simply passed with a few weak fireworks, were it not for the imagination of two people, Roby Kidd and Frida Walden. Now, Roby wasn't an employee of any government department. And Frida, well, she wasn't a mandarin in Ottawa either. She ran the Hamilton Public Library system. And Roby was the first Canadian to get a PhD in adult education, and some years before he'd founded the Canadian Association of Adult Education, which for a long time has had a great role to play in this country. Together, they organized the first conference to think about Canada's centennial, and they did it in 1957. A full decade before the centennial, and 5 years before the federal government's Centennial Commission was born. Why did they do it? Well, in a sense, both were educators. When they thought about the centennial, they didn't just imagine parades and picnics and public declarations. What they imagined was something more profound. Like all great teachers, they knew that real learning isn't something that you pick up from textbooks or in lectures. Real learning is lived. So what could we learn, they asked, by really living out our love for and generosity towards this big, peculiar country? When they looked at the centennial, they saw a chance for Canadians to look themselves in the mirror, to take stock of what they had accomplished, and to learn more about ourselves, our neighbors, and our country. Their conference, an event not unlike our own today, drew together representatives from across civil society. The agenda was simple. They asked questions of one another, and they gradually articulated a set of principles and drew up a list of ideas. Their work helped to propel decision makers into action. It established the tone and sensibility of Centennial, a way of understanding the social significance of an event that capped a decade of intense political activity and linked thousands upon thousands of different initiatives together. And I want to show you what I mean. I have only 3 slides this morning, and they each come from some of the advertising developed by Peter McLeod for Canada's centennial. So this is the first one. It came out before the centennial celebrations began. And I want to draw your attention to the last paragraph here, because it talks about Canadian Confederation and significance. It's a time to reflect on past achievements of our growth into a modern, dynamic country, and to look ahead to a future of prosperity and greatness. What are you planning for centennial? Now that last phrase, when I first read it, struck me. Because what it doesn't say is brought to you by the Government of Canada, taking care of you and your hard-working family. Here's a list of events for all of you to enjoy. No, it hands the question right back to Canadians. What are you planning for the centennial? Well, this was the thinking and sensibility that Roby and Frida embedded in our centennial. The government took this a step forward. Many of you remember the centennial logo. You'll still see it stamped into thousands upon thousands of kilometers of sidewalk across the country. Whenever I see one looking down, I tend to speed up, because for me it reminds me of just how little time we have to plan a successful celebration. Well, they produced that logo. There we go. No? There we go. They produced that logo. One of the very popular books of the time was Abby Hoffman's Steal This Book, kind of manifesto of 60s radicalism. So here's the federal government having a little fun with it. The top line there says, take this centennial symbol. And then it says, put it on a banner, use it on your products and in your advertising, engrave it on your stationery, paint it on your vehicles, wear it on your lapel, display it on your cartons, hang it in your plant or office, stick it on your pay envelope, stencil it on your coffee cups, carry it, fly it, but above all, use it. And below there's a coupon that you would mail to Ottawa. And no questions asked, they'd send you back photo-ready artwork. As I like to joke, can you imagine trying that with the Olympic rings today? Or any other piece of federal iconography? This sent a very powerful message that when we asked Canadians, what are you planning for Centennial? We were saying that we trust you to lead Centennial. We'll give you the very same symbol that we're using ourselves. And so it linked things together. The last illustration I want to show you, an ad that the federal government took out in 1968, once everything was said and done. Again, too small for a lot of you to see, but the headline here in bold says, Centennial turned out to be the most fun we've had in years. Were you surprised? Well, the answer for most people was yes. Yes, much like our recent Vancouver Olympics. It was a slow burn before it finally ignited. The last paragraph I blew up to the side here says, in 1967, now any other country in the world, I'd say to you, would have written this sentence different. It would have said, in 1967, we celebrated ourselves as a nation. And what does it say? In 1967, we learned a lot about ourselves as a nation. Let's not stop now. Let's enjoy this new knowledge of ourselves and make every year to come one of excitement and discovery. We'll just call it 1968, Centennial +1, and keep on going.